Our feature presenter is Spencer X. Smith, the founder of SpencerXSmith.com and Amplify. He helps people responsible for business development use their social media to increase not only their influence, but their sales as well. He's been called a digital marketing expert by Forbes. He spoke at the New York Stock Exchange in September and has been featured in dozens of other publications as well. One thing you might not know about our presenter is that he loves watching sea otters play at the zoo. So lots of fun there. Who doesn't? Today he's here to tell about the #1 social media metric that no one is talking about. So without further ado, give a warm Business Accelerator welcome to Spencer X. Smith.
Thank you, Chris. Hi. How is everyone? So here are some slides that are about today. So I'll get to mine. These are the obligatory channels that I'm going to ask you to follow me on social media, because I wouldn't be much of a social media guy had I not asked you right off the bat to at least connect with me or link up with me or whatever verbs we're using these days on these social platforms. So LinkedIn's probably my go-to, but otherwise if you want to have a conversation with me, Twitter's probably the best place as well. So, and by the way, guys, thank you so much for being here. Everybody watching online as well, thank you very much for being here. I'm very excited to share this with you because this was the formation, what I share with you today, was the formation for this book that my co-author and I, DP Knudten, who's in the crowd right now, back there in the green coat, he and I spent, it was about 2 years worth of writing, 4 months worth of editing, and finally got it done. And so what we're going to be talking about today is all the stuff that we figured out over this period of time of writing and editing this book, and then sharing this stuff with the people with whom we're associated, either as clients or in a teacher-student capacity. So everybody good so far? Everybody good? All right, cool. So first quote I'm going to ask you to consider. You've probably seen something like this before, or at least a variation of this before. And Peter Drucker probably said this, because it's not quite sure if he actually said it or not, but he gets quoted and credited for it, is what gets measured gets managed. So what does that mean to you if you think about that? What does that mean to you? This is where we have crowd participation, and it's easier if you're here than asking the online people. So DP, please.
That which you pay attention to, put a number to, that you can then share with your management team or yourself, is the stuff you actually pay most attention to.
So here the word that DP said that I believe was the most operative word, and that is attention, right? Because that's something that we all have in a finite capacity. You can only really direct your attention in one area. And that, if you are actually managing something and directing your attention that way, you could perhaps measure it and then make it better, right? And so that's the entire thrust of what it is that we're going to be talking about today. But think about this. We talk in terms of measurement on social media. So I'll ask you to consider this. Which measurements can you use to gauge social media success? What are some of the things that you've looked at in the past as far as if you know something's working or not? Yes, please.
Shares.
Shares, okay. What else? Likes, comments, okay, what else?
Followers.
Followers, okay, what else? What else is there?
Click-through rate.
Click-through rate. Okay, so now we're talking about conversion. So there's what we call vanity metrics, like followers, likes, maybe comments and shares are not quite vanity, but they're at least something that we don't really know what people ultimately want from it. But clicks, that's behavior, right? That's exhibiting behavior based on something that you're sharing. So what I had put on the screen here is impression, engagement, clicks, conversions, actual revenue generated, which is always kind of cool, right? If we can actually do something by way of sharing something, hoping that people will actually convert to being customers. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. But I'm going to ask you to think about specifically that, impressions, because that's oftentimes what we default to at first if we're saying to the people with whom we work, if we report to them, or if we say, I'm trying to justify these things to myself, like who's actually seeing this stuff? And as you go down this funnel, if you will, these get more and more difficult to gauge and to get actually people to interact on. So you can wow yourself or your clients with impressions and say, wow, look at the thousands or tens of thousands of people. Engagement is going that one step further and people actually doing something with what it is that you share. Clicks, as we talked about, are some kind of action. And then conversions are really difficult, aren't they? Because conversions is something we need to figure out what is a conversion. Because unless you're transacting an e-commerce website where it's click, click, buy, oftentimes we really don't know what a conversion is. Is it somebody clicking on a specific page, a series of pages, filling out a form, giving you their email address? Is it them buying something? Is it getting to the shopping cart and abandoning it? So there's a lot of options here, right? So this stuff gets very complex very quickly. But what measurement do we always hear from people? What's the one thing they bring up? ROI, right. So this is the thing that people go, what's my ROI? Well, let's talk about it. I'll show you how easy it is to calculate ROI. You guys with me? Okay, this is so easy to calculate ROI. Simple, simple, simple math. ROI equals the gains minus your cost divided by the cost. So very simply put, you have 10 in gains, it cost you 4, you then divide by that 4 and you have 1.5 times. So in other words, this would be your ROI using this example based on this math. So you get 1.5 times output for 1 time input. And breaking that down to then dollar terms, because we can use this as a multiplier, like 1.5 times, or we can use it as a dollar amount. So said another way, for every dollar you invest, you get $1.50 back. Easy, right? Like ROI is a really, really simple calculation. Like I was a finance guy in college and we got a lot more complicated than this, right? So is that it? I mean, is that all we have to worry about? Easy peasy, right? But hold on. So we have these two factors here, gains and cost, but what is a gain and what is a cost? So what are some examples of gains that we could get by way of doing something that we want to measure? What's an example of a gain? Help me out with this, guys. Yes, please.
Ticket sale or donation.
Sale or donation. Tom, you said sales as well? Okay, what else? What else would be a gain, Julie?
A download or downloading something you're putting on the site.
Yeah, download, so what we call digital assets, right? Giving out like a free ebook or a PDF checklist, hint, hint, that I'll be asking you to download later. Something like that, right? What else is there? What other measurements could we look at when it comes to gains? Yes, please.
Subscribers.
Subscribers, yeah, for sure. So on an email list, perhaps, as an example, or maybe hard subscribers, like if you're sending out something that's a physical piece. What else is there? Sir, do you have something? Okay. All right, well, let's look at some of the soft ones. Okay, how about new customers? Because really, there are only fundamentally 3 ways to grow any of our businesses, right? So the first one is the hardest one, which is what? What did I just say? New customers. Okay, what's the other way? Repeat customers, and let's break that down into 2 portions. Okay, so you can grow your business through new customers, through existing customers, and having them do what? Buy more, and then what else? And repeat, right? So either frequency or breadth. So we say, I'm going to get somebody who's buying from me 6 times a year to buy 12, or get somebody who's buying this red mouse to also buy this audio tape, right? Or this pencil. So how do we then increase our influence that way? What about market share? Is market share a gain? Yeah, if you start shutting out your competitors, is that market share? So we're suddenly getting a little nebulous with these terms, aren't we? We go, well, market share, well, what if we don't know what our market share is? Then what? Then what's our ROI? What about brand recognition? Because there's this huge chasm, you guys, for us as an individual or for any of the brands for which we work between I've heard of you and I've never heard of you in my life. And that's really hard to cross that chasm, right? Because at least people can recollect going, yeah, for some reason I recognize you, but I don't know why. I can't tell you it was because of a billboard or a radio ad or a television ad or any of the social media shares that we can, but it's those things where we overcome being unknown, right? And what about existing customer loyalty? What about that? What about people who've already made purchases, who are already doing business with you, who want to feel good about continuing to do business with you? Or if their boss goes, now why are we doing business with that company? It's like, well, here's all the great stuff that they're doing in the community, or all the stuff they're doing to be more innovative, or be ahead of the curve, or make us feel good about what we're purchasing, right? So what about costs? What are some of the costs? Ads, okay, good example. What else? What else is there?
Time to do all this stuff.
Time.
Whatever.
Time investment, right? And is time a hard cost or is it a soft cost? Yeah, right, exactly. It could be, if you're paying somebody else, it could be a hard cost, right? It could be payroll, or it could be your own time, which would be a soft cost, right? The cost of doing something versus not. What about if you lose the money? What about if you get nothing back? So the risk, perhaps. And then what about opportunity cost? What do I mean when I say opportunity cost? What does that refer to?
I'm doing this, so I'm not doing these other million.
Yes, because we have finite attention, therefore we have finite time, therefore we can't do everything. Right? So when we start to look at it from this standpoint, okay, So how do we know what's true? And how do we know what to measure? And how do we know, going a step further, what a sale actually results in? Is it an average? Is it a lifetime value of perhaps a new customer who had started something with us? Is there a profit attached to it, or are we just generating revenue? Right, so there are all of these components, but I'm going to try to think outside of this realm a little bit, because suddenly we're thinking like finance people, we're thinking like accountants, and we're here to talk about social media marketing, right? So this is my proposal for you. Tell me if you agree. When it comes to social media ROI, the goal in business is not to be the most talented. So this is not a meritocracy. It's not like going to sports and being like, hey, regardless of where you are, if you play soccer, we will find you. Don't worry about it, because that's our job, right? So it's not about having the most talent. It's not about being the most well-known person. Because who in here knows Oprah? Okay, by one name. She doesn't need a last name, right? We don't even need to say Winfrey. But who has ever hired Oprah here? Okay, so she's astronomically well-known, but no one here is going to give her money unless you buy her favorite things, which somebody might do in here, right? Okay, but the goal, in my estimation at least, is to be the person who's top of mind for the right people at the right time. So not to wait in your basement developing a 10,000-hour skill that then you come up from the basement and go, now I'm ready to share, because you need to have that talent. And it's not about you just broadcasting yourself everywhere. It's about you, and I'm going to use this as a verb, so excuse me, but niching down to say, this is exactly who I am and this is exactly what I stand for. So I will be tweeting this out in 1 minute and 55 seconds. So if you'd like to retweet this, this is the thrust of everything that we talk about today. And so this idea of ROTOMA, which rhymes with Sonoma, it's the return on top of mind awareness. So said another way, are people thinking about you, or are they not thinking about you? And if they are thinking about you, what is it that they're thinking about? You guys with me? You doing well? Okay, cool. So let's test this hypothesis. Let's see if ROTOMA, which is a term that I made up, right? What if it did tweet it out? Thanks, DP. Okay. So what if ROTOMA isn't really a thing? Well, let's see. Let's test the hypothesis. So that's really what this is, the hypothesis. Now, if you could, please, I know everybody here has a notepad, and for those of you online, please write this down. Write down the first of which of these categories for you come to mind. The first athlete, the first actor, the first business person, and then maybe the first social media personality. I don't know. That may be a shameless plug. Take just a couple moments to write down the first person. Don't think about it, just first person who comes to mind, okay? Okay, so who has an athlete that came to mind right away? Please.
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers? Okay. Yeah, especially after last night's lack of him, right? Okay. Who else comes to mind for you right away as an athlete? Please.
Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan hasn't played basketball for how long? Too long? Well said. Giannis is a good replacement, right? LeBron's a good replacement, but how long? Michael Jordan hasn't played for. But somehow, Michael Jordan, still not performing his art, so to speak, somehow is still with us, right? So who else athlete-wise? Those are the two. I'm sorry?
Kobe Bryant.
Kobe Bryant? Okay, why?
He was just my favorite as a kid.
He's your favorite as a kid. Okay, but somehow he's still stuck with you, even though he hasn't been around much lately. Okay? So what about actor? What actor or actress came to mind for you first, please? Reese Witherspoon. Okay, why?
She did this whole thing, talking about that Me Too thing that you just did.
Ah, yes. Okay. Who else?
Julie Roberts.
Julie Roberts. Why, Julie?
There's a movie trailer on right now about a movie coming out with her in it.
Ah, okay. Okay. All right. Who else? Give me one more actor or actress that comes to mind, please.
George Clooney.
George Clooney? Why is that?
Just because he's been in the news because his movie that he directed hasn't gotten very good reviews.
Oh, so he directed a movie and it has gotten good reviews. Okay. So what about a business person? Which business person for you comes to mind first? Yes.
Jack Welch.
Jack Welch. Okay. Former CEO of General Electric. Okay, so why Jack Welch?
Read his book.
Ah, okay. Okay, so it's something where you just consume some of his content. Now, does Jack know that you consume some of his content?
Well, heavens no.
Okay. So he doesn't know that, but yet something that he created still lives out there and you're learning from him. Okay. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So who else business person-wise comes to mind?
Mark Zuckerberg, because we're at a social media.
Zucks, yeah, Zucks. He's pretty famous, right? Founder of Facebook. Okay, who else? Give me one more.
Warren Buffett,
Warren Buffett. Why?
just that sort of iconic business person, right?
Yeah, he is, for sure, for sure. Now, what I noticed is that no one said any of these three people. Who's the person on the left? Mike Tyson. Person in the middle? Russell Crowe. What's that?
I had him.
You had him? Okay, but he's your favorite, okay. What about the gentleman on the right? This is kind of aging me a little bit, but Lee Iacocca. So Lee Iacocca's last name is actually, he used to be the chairman of Chrysler, and the acronym for his last name is I am chairman of Chrysler always. Pretty cool, right? But now think about it. Mike Tyson used to be the biggest prize fighter in the world. What am I, in the 1930s? Like, oh, the prize fighter. No, like, okay, sorry. He used to be the biggest boxer in the world, right? Unequivocally, Mike Tyson was the guy in the late 1980s, early 1990s. What about him? Big fan of Russell Crowe. Did he ever win any awards or anything? Yeah, he won an Oscar for Gladiator, Best Actor, right? And what about Lee Iacocca? Lee Iacocca, before Warren Buffett would land to cheering fans in Japan, Lee Iacocca was that guy. So the three people from those categories who used to be the biggest in the entire world, we now didn't even think of in our group. Did anyone think of, outside of you, thinking about Russell Crowe, did any of you think about these three people at all? Okay, so your memories, right? There's a recency effect, right? In economics, we talk about this. The recency effect is we attach more importance to things that have happened recently versus things that have happened in the past. So we go, well, I haven't thought of Russell Crowe lately, but why would I? He's not doing any movies, is he? Maybe. It was really bad? Okay. So if we're not maintaining top-of-mind awareness, all the brand equity that these people have, they're still very, very large personalities, but they don't come to mind for us, right? So when I ask you, athlete, actor, business person, you can name people that weren't these people, formerly the biggest in the world. Now that same thing obviously applies to any of us that are doing business. So if I ask what your favorite food fight restaurant is, you may say El Dorado Grill, you may say Tex Tubbs, you may say one of the other 23 or 25? 19, I'm sorry. 19 total? Okay. So you may say one of the other 17 versus those, right? But it's what you thought of most recently. So how do we continue to stay top of mind? And once again, that is the phenomenon that I could call return on top of mind awareness, or ROTOMA. So let me talk a little bit about the origins of this and how this came to be, because I'm going to be honest with you, January 2015 was when I really started using social media. And I couldn't before that. So here's why. Back in 2008, I used to have a job. This, by the way, is going to cite the page numbers of the book where I cover these topics along with my co-author DP. But back then, Twitter was just 2 years old. And it was mostly nerds, right? No one really knew what to say. We were just kind of there and like, okay, that's cool. But back in 2008, I had a job where I used to get in my company-issued Chevy Impala, and I would drive 40,000 miles a year, give or take, and go and see people in their offices with hopes that they'd do something with me that we had never anticipated before. So said another way, who has a 401k at their job? Okay, so the 401k, the statement that you get in the mail, if they still do those at all, the website that you go to, those are the companies that I used to work for. And we would go in, especially during fourth quarter, during the year, and try to get people to move their 401k plans from where they were to where I worked. And I had to do about 50 million in new assets every year. That was my goal. So it was a lot of work, a lot of time. But the drawback of my job back then is I used to live here in Madison. So this is obviously a Midwestern map. And by the way, I've been kind of pinging all over the country doing talks lately. That whole idea of us being a flyover zone is entirely true. Like, it's really true. Like, just out in Boston, people look at this and they're like, where is that? Like, what is this? Like, that's Lake Michigan, don't you guys? And they're like, no, like Chicago. Like, yeah, they can't put it on a map. Anyway, okay. So we all here, at least in person, know where we are, right, in Madison. So this is the job I used to have. I would leave on a Monday morning, drive this entire route down here to Indianapolis, stay down there during the business week, do my job, and then return on Friday afternoons. Now, we in Wisconsin are in which time zone? Central, okay. Indianapolis, any idea? Eastern, yeah. So do you lose an hour or do you gain an hour on the way there? Yeah, you lose an hour, right? It actually gets 1 hour later as you're traveling, which is always good, right? So what I used to do is drive that on a Monday morning with hopes that I make a 9 a.m. meeting in Indianapolis. So what time would you have to leave Madison to get to Indianapolis?
Me?
3? Who said 3:30? Come on. That is, by the way, a really good time to hit Chicago. But typically, with one stop to get gas, 2:30 to 8. Okay? So 2:30 to 8 a.m. Central on a Monday morning in 2008, what would you do with that time in the car? Listen to audiobooks. Okay, what else? What else would you do?
Listen to the radio.
Say again?
Listen to the radio.
Listen to the radio? Okay, what kind of stuff? Talk radio? Okay, what else?
Make calls.
Make call. Who would you call, Tom?
Somebody,
You'd call businesses and leave voicemails? Like, what kind of stuff would you say? I'm just curious.
Following up on things you've done earlier.
So you'd follow up on
Pre-planned.
pre-plan? Okay,
Move along.
that's smart. Okay. So I did all those things. Listen to audiobooks, and I'm embarrassed to say, like, I've learned foreign languages needlessly. Like, watashi wa eigo ga wakarimasu ka? Alexanderplatz. Like, don't ever learn Japanese or German because no one speaks those languages. Nobody. Even Germans don't speak German. I tried it. I was there. Okay. So I developed my first social media platform because, guys, what I realized is during the business day, so, maybe like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., give or take, I do about 4 to 6 in-person meetings per day and then just make phone calls constantly. So make and return voicemails, try to get people on the phone. But I developed my first social media platform back then, 2008, because this is something that I can't waste my time listening to audiobooks anymore. I gotta do something else. And this is actually what it looked like. So pretty lo-fi, right? And it sat on the passenger seat next to me, but it was a printout of 164 targeted people that I wanted to do business with me. And I would call them one by one and leave voicemail messages. One by one. So Tom, you hit the nail on the head. It wasn't calling people on their cell phones, which don't ever do. It was calling them at work and leaving voicemails. Now, I'll tell you the voicemails I didn't leave. Checking in, touching base, or following up. Do you ever get an email with the subject line? Have you ever sent one like that? I've sent thousands. Really in error, right? Because if you ask somebody as the opener to your email, hey, I'm following up, checking in or touching base, or leaving a voicemail, what does that really mean? What are you really asking them? Why haven't you got back to me? I have this sheet and it says I'm supposed to call you, so I'm just gonna follow up or touch base or check in. But that's a way of softening things to say, do you wanna buy yet or not? So what would I say instead? Well, I would call them based on my 16 to 20 in-person meetings that I would do that week, and I would leave them stories of what I've learned in the sales field. So I'd say, hey, it's Spencer X. Smith from the Hartford. I'm your 401k specialist here in Indianapolis. Last week we had the opportunity to pitch 4 different 401k plans. One was a law firm, $6 million, 3 lawyers at this firm. They were worried about failing their testing, meaning they got money back, and they were really frustrated with it. Here's how we fixed it. So I'd leave that same voicemail over and over again for 5.5 hours, and I had this list of 164 people because that's about how many calls I could make. So what would happen? Well, I'd leave these voicemails, and I know that these advisors, these financial advisors I was calling on, would eventually make it into their office on a Monday morning, and they'd see this red voicemail button, they'd hit it, and they'd hear my voice. Now, why was that important to me? Top of mind, right? So for me, it was immaterial if they listened to the entirety of the message as long as they heard Spencer X. Smith, Hartford, adding value. So who in here works in digital marketing? Okay. What do we now call this phenomenon where we try to educate people before they buy something from us? What's that industry called? Content marketing. So what I was doing is I was content marketing one person at a time with hopes that I was adding enough value. So the thing with content marketing is, can you expect immediate results from putting your downloadable PDF or ebook on your site and just having somebody buy something? I mean, maybe, but that's not the goal, right? The goal is to engender trust and have people go, you're helping me make a better buying decision whether I do it with you or not, and therefore I want to do business with you. And that's exactly what I did when I was content marketing, because it wasn't that day I would leave those voicemails. It wasn't that Monday where people get in at 8:15, they'd immediately call me back. It wouldn't be a week later or a month later, it'd be months down the road. And people would call me and go, you know, Spence, you had left me this voicemail message about this law firm thing, and I can't even tell you how long ago it was, but can you tell me that story again? And this is what it would do for me, okay? The average sales cycle for me back in the day doing business-to-business sales was 17 Months. Months. Typically, if I got a lead at the very end of the sales cycle, people would ask me for a quote, and I'd compete based on price. And I'd come in marginally more, and I'd lose based on a tiny price difference. Sometimes I'd win, sometimes I'd lose. But typically, when I'd leave these voicemails, people would call me very early on in the sales cycle, and they go, I just identified this opportunity. It may close this year, it may close next year, but I really, really, really want your help. Because I know that you keep proving to me that you're doing the work, and you're making me look good in front of these people that I'm trying to impress. You guys with me on this? So that was the goal, and it worked because I got nice little sales awards like this, and I got to hold up a nice oversized check at a conference that had an obscene amount of money that I had to actually blank out because it was so large. Just kidding, that's not true. But that was the idea, right? Like they wanted to do business with me because I was helping educate them. So looking at this now, back in financial services, I could not use social media. They go, do not touch this, we don't understand it, we're covered by all these securities regulations, please don't do it. And I looked at this as an old IT guy and I go, holy cow, like this is a really, really cool opportunity for us to leverage what it is we're doing that I'm currently doing one-on-one, but we're not using it at all. So I left the securities industry January 2015, went headlong into social media for about 4 months. So that 10,000 hours that I talked to you about in your basement, that's pretty much what I did. And they came up for air and I go, I discovered how to do this stuff. It's awesome. Okay, you guys with me? Okay, good. So let's think about media. And the word social media, right? Media is really just a plural for which word? Medium, thank you. So a lot of these industries where I do these talks like banking and legal and financial services, they go, social media, I don't get it. I'm like, look, I don't want you to worry about social media. I want you to worry about a social medium. Try that first, and then we'll talk about media, okay? But let's think about these 3 kinds of media. Really, there are 3 there's infinite digital, which is at the bottom, which is replicable and shareable. There's analog and there's digital. Okay, so who in here is under the age of, let's say, 28? All right, I'm gonna get you guys up front since you're right here. Tell me what it is that we do with these 2 things.
I'm not that young.
You're not that young? Okay, well, are you that young?
I'm 27.
Do you know how to use these?
Yeah.
What do you do?
It's a cassette and it's a pencil.
And then what do you do with it?
You write with it and you listen to music.
Ha, you hear what she said? You write with it and you listen to music. That's awesome. How do we use these 2 things together?
I have no idea.
Sir? Sir, can you help me?
You wind it back.
So you put,
Because you can put different songs or stories on it.
there you go, see?
Or when it gets stuck in your tape player.
Yes, yes. So slight variation in age there, right? So what was your first tape? Do you guys remember? What was your first tape?
I made a tape off the radio in the car.
Made a tape. Nice. All right. What did you say?
Mine was
Alanis
Alanis Morissette.
Morissette? Okay. Okay.
Def Leppard.
Which Def Leppard?
Or Hysteria, right?
Hysteria.
Around me, whatever album.
Wow, we were meant to be at the same session today because that was my Pyromania, circa 1983. But my buddy Matt, who's still one of my best friends today, gave me this tape.
I got it at a birthday party too.
Nice. And did you guys ever wear out your tapes?
Yes.
So then what do?
Fine.
You buy a new one. So what you're telling me is this thing ages as you use it. Or don't use it. Either way, right? It breaks down. So analog media breaks down. Eventually it doesn't become as useful as it used to. And by the way, I read this on LinkedIn recently. Cassettes are making a comeback, kinda. I guess Justin Bieber's actually releasing tapes. Have you guys heard this? All right, so anyway, yeah, they have to create more tape, I guess, more magnetic tape because no one was using it for so long, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so that's analog, right? So analog is something where we can have it, store it, use it, but yet it degrades, right? It gets less usable over time. Then think about what I used to do with these financial advisors, this voicemail. I would leave people voicemails, but it'd be one-on-one. So it'd be digital voicemails, but yet if they wanted to share it with somebody, they could maybe go onto their voicemail system and try to figure out how to forward it, but mostly it would be just one-on-one, right? It'd be digital by way of me doing something. But then if we scale that and we think about now with social, the fact that we can digitize anything we want instantly and then share it without losing any of the quality is a really, really, really big deal. So just to offer some context, recently on LinkedIn, I ran an experiment on LinkedIn. And now LinkedIn has native video. Am I speaking English when I say native video? Okay, so you can actually upload it directly, and then it plays, right? So it lives on LinkedIn. And I was running this experiment to see, okay, who is actually watching my stuff? So the one on the left is a video where I got 78 likes and 10 comments and resulted in 1,585 views. That's when I was just in Boston at Gillette Stadium last week, which was awesome. One on the right was 2 days before here in Madison, where it got 96 likes, 11 comments, and it got about 7,500 views. So I broke down the math, and I just have this text up here where I pointed out what it is that I'm telling you right now. But it looks like even though this got about 80% of the likes and 90% of the comments, it got way, way, way less views. And so I started a conversation on LinkedIn to ask people, like, have you experienced this? Like, are you seeing the same thing on LinkedIn? Now, what would it take me to educate people like this before social media? It would take me spending 5.5 hours in the car, leaving 164 voicemails that I really hope that people got. But if you start to do the math here, this said 1,585 views, this said 7,500 views, and then because I shared this data, within a day then, if you break this down on LinkedIn, you can see that 2,500 views of this post have gone out, and people from these companies with this job title, from that geographic territory, are consuming my content. And it took me about 5 minutes to do that post. So now do you suppose, have you guys heard the term account selling at all? Anybody tell me what account selling is? Okay, so account selling is you going, I'm identifying with an opportunity to say, I want to go and target this company. And I want to start to get to know people at this company by way of having them realize who the heck I am, who I represent, what I sell. And eventually when I go in and I pitch to them, they know who I am. Okay, so that's account selling, identifying opportunities, saying I want to sell into this company. So do you suppose, like if I want to sell into maybe Mass Mutual, which is coming up here third, do you think people there might have more of a propensity to actually know who I am versus not? And the answer is obviously yes, right? It's more than 0. And in fact, it's 11 people in a day that have seen me, okay? So instead of analog, instead of digital one-on-one, what I propose to you is creating infinite digital content. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, yikes. That's a little scary, isn't it? You're putting something out there that if I say something dumb or wrong, it'll live forever. Anybody have that fear at all? Ever? I have the fear of public speaking, don't you? Like, what if I trip over this cord and the whole thing just goes down? Everybody online gets to get shut off. I mean, there's a lot of things that can go wrong when you share stuff, right? But this is what I want to convince you of otherwise. And this is really, really, really important. This is called the 1% rule of the internet. Have you guys heard of this before? Okay. All right, well, here's the way that it breaks down if you haven't heard of this before. And by the way, this is from page 19 of the book. 90% of people online, this covers everybody online, 90% are spectators. So they watch and they read and they listen and they just consume. 9% actually engage in some capacity. So they'll like and they'll share and they'll comment. And that leaves 1%. The 1% does what? Create. The 1% creates. Do you guys buy that? Do you think that's true? I'll ask you. I've been in a lot of airports the past couple months. I challenge you, the next time you're traveling, try to make eye contact with anyone in an airport or waiting in line for coffee. Does anyone know they haven't played elevator music in elevators for the past 3 years? No one noticed. Like, I'm just going to sit here. Did anybody make any kind of connections before you guys got here today? Or did you just get on your phones and wait for this session to start? Right? I mean, we're all there sometimes, right? We're all there. But this is really important. Those who create content by default become the voice of their network. Not the voice of America or the voice of the new generation. It's the people with whom you're associated. Because you ask 100 kids under the age of 15 who their favorite YouTuber is, you know how many answers you're going to get? 100 different answers, because everybody is now these micro niches of famous. Like, people keep talking about the show Stranger Things, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I think it's on Netflix, not Amazon, right? It's on Netflix. Like, that's all I know about it. Like, don't ask me, but all these people are just engrossed by this show, right? So the way that they binge consume content that makes them think about that show more than anything else, right? So you can become the default voice of your network by simply creating content. Now, the way I learned this is the #1 lesson from my rock band from page 32. The hardest thing in the world is to create your own scene. The hardest thing in the world as a band, who actually performs live? Anyone? I know DP does. Anyone else? Okay, so it's really, really hard to go to a venue and say, I'm going to rent your venue, I'm going to get sound people to show up, I'm going to get light people to show up, I'm going to get the rest of my bandmates hopefully to show up, which is always the biggest challenge. And then, oh, by the way, I have to sell tickets to it too. And that's like the afterthought. It's like, oh, shoot, we got to get people here, right? So what I discovered is it's way, way easier to go where a scene already exists and make yourself valuable. By going, well, where are things already happening with which I'd like to associate and somehow insert myself in that conversation? And this is what our band did with Summerfest. So we had aspired to play there when I was a kid growing up in Milwaukee. I cold called the Summerfest office, and Stacy Olson Entertainment Group, who's still running a business in Milwaukee, she actually walked me through what I call the Summerfest effect. And she took me through what is at the bottom here of the most people have joined a band and the least people have played at Summerfest. So said another way, have you joined a band? Yeah, a lot of people join bands. Have you actually performed for a crowd? Have you gotten out of the proverbial basement and actually done something? Yes. Have you written a song? And when she asked me that, I go, well, Stacy, okay, I get why you're asking me these things. We're a legit band, you know, I can show you why, but she asked me, have you guys written songs? And I go, why would you ask me if we've written songs? Well, what are those bands that play other people's music? Cover bands. So Stacy goes to me, well, Spence, we already have these big, big, big cover bands like the Love Monkeys and Vic Ferrari, and they do very well. We don't need another cover band, but if you can perform your art, if you can create this art and get people at Summerfest to come and listen to you, that's good for us because then we offer something unique. She goes, have you actually recorded a song and released the album? I go, yeah. Have you sold tickets to your own show? Yeah. We've gotten out and we've hustled. Have you done press and magazine reviews? Actually had people show up and write about you? Yeah. Well, have you done a formal press kit? Can you give me something that tells me as to why I should listen to you and why you should play here? And I said no. And when we did that, and I got it to Stacy, she let us play there. And so once you play Summerfest, you never undo that. You can go confidently to Taste of Madison, or Bands on the Beach in Manitowoc, or Port Washington Fish Day, and go, hey, we played the world's largest music festival, aren't we good enough for you? And they go, of course. Of course. So where can we go where a scene already exists and make ourselves valuable? Well, this is probably a good start. Because if you notice that leftmost column, which is now Facebook, as of June of 2017, they have 2 billion users. LinkedIn didn't even make this list, and it has 500 million users. Typically in business mode, ready to consume business content, ready to perhaps buy something from you. So let's go where a scene exists and start making ourselves valuable. Start having conversations as opposed to just consuming, like a lot of us do, having conversations instead. You guys with me on that? All right, cool. So from page 45, this is the one social media strategy that works everywhere. And I'm giving away a big secret here because it took me a while to figure this out, but here's the secret, okay? If you're in a band, because I want to talk about bands some more, all you got to do is wear your own t-shirt. So this guy from U2, what's his name?
The Edge.
The Edge? So what do you call him, like Mr. Edge? Okay, so Mr. Edge, we know that you're in U2. You don't need to wear that t-shirt. Mr. Michaels, like, I know you're probably working out or whatever you're doing, but we don't need to know that you're in Poison because we probably already realize that. Mike Love from Beach Boys, you're wearing your own Beach Boys hat? And I'm going to give Rivers Cuomo from Weezer at least a little bit of leeway here because he's probably doing it to be ironic because that's Weezer, right? So all you got to do on social media is brag about yourself, right? Just go out there and be like, hey, what's up? Am I right? You guys know who Jason Kotecki is? Anyone ever heard of him before? Really talented artist. He and I got to share a stage last week. So you may notice that I'm wearing his t-shirt. So instead of wearing my t-shirt, this is my opportunity to talk nicely about him and showcase his stuff instead. Because what I figured out, you guys, is really there's only 3 options that we have for all of social media as to how we use it. And you can either say nothing, which a lot of people do. You can say something about yourself, which a lot of people do, or you can say something about someone else. And what are the two options when it comes to you saying something about someone else? What are the two things that you can do? You can either be mean, or you can be nice. And there's a lot of people already being mean, so why not be nice? You guys buy that? Okay. Well, let's look at how this plays out. Let's actually see what the data tells us when you start to say nice stuff about other people and why that's so important. So my friend Allie Lynch, she was actually the chairperson of this conference where I just spoke in Nashville. And if you guys ever go on LinkedIn, you're going to see this periodically. We're going to get a notification that says so-and-so liked a post that mentioned you. And what I love about LinkedIn is the shelf life on these posts just seems to go for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like a tweet will never get retweeted a week later. But I'll get stuff on LinkedIn that I posted months ago, and people are still talking about it. So what Allie did on LinkedIn, which I thought was so cool, because this Nashville conference was awesome. You guys been to Nashville lately? Oh, it's bananas down there. It's unbelievably cool. Okay, so Allie could have gotten on LinkedIn and been like, hey, you know what? That was a flawless conference. I'm awesome. I booked great speakers. Everybody's delighted. Look at me. Which is not outside the realm of what a lot of people do on Facebook, right? Like, look at me, look at how awesome I am. But instead of that, what she did is she deflected the attention to all of these other people. So she went on LinkedIn and she posted, thank you, phenomenal Association of Legal Administrators, Regional Legal Managed Conference Planning Committee. So the people with whom she was working, and then went through and thanked all of the individual speakers as well as the staff of people who worked there. Now, why in the world would she do that? Because they all get tagged. So tell me more about tagging on LinkedIn. What happens? So look, you guys can see this, right? So you see the black text and you see the blue text, right? So when you tag somebody on LinkedIn, what happens?
So I saw this.
You saw that post, okay. All right.
So then I went to her thing, I could have followed her and followed all those people too, but then, I mean, she's just doing brand exposure and for all these other folks too, which is great because I might need something for them, and then, yeah.
So what you're saying is she, because she's a purveyor of good news about other people,
Yeah.
that made you look at her and therefore follow her,
Yeah.
even though it wasn't about her?
No.
Huh.
That's even better because then her authority and her position, like I know that whoever she's talking about has some sort of quality.
Yes. Okay, so let's walk through then, to your point, let's walk through when you tag somebody on a social media platform, what happens? What's the first thing that happens? They get notified, right? And then what happens?
Well, everybody sees that you tagged them.
Everybody sees that you tag them. But let's think about this person. So they log on to LinkedIn or Facebook, Twitter, it doesn't matter, right? They see that you tag them. They go, oh, somebody tagged me. What did they say? Something nice. Cool. What am I going to do by way of acknowledgement? Share it, like it, comment, right? So what are the computers that dictate what we see on the social media platforms? Then they go, wow. As of when I took the screenshot, so 8 days after she posted it, had 57 likes and 25 comments. The vast majority of shares on LinkedIn get how many comments? None. None. So the computers go, well, that's cool. Allie is sharing stuff that obviously people are engaging with because they're not just scrolling by. They're hitting like. They're actually going out of the way to comment to say how positive they are. So if I like or comment on Allie's stuff that she's sharing here, am I more or less likely to see her next post? More. Always. Because computers are dumb, right? There's zeros and ones. They go, you told me you like this, I'm going to show you more, right? It doesn't know any better than that. So by way of that, I asked her, I go, Allie, tell me about your engagement, because I can't see the amount of views, like that I shared with you before on mine. So she sent this over to me, and she showed me that she has 939 followers on LinkedIn, and she had 7,600 views, and it just keeps going up. It just keeps going up. So look for opportunities, as opposed to saying nothing, or saying something about yourself, or saying something nasty about somebody, which plenty of people do already. Find an opportunity to say something nice about someone else. What I'll ask you to do before you leave here today, take the person next to you, do a selfie right here in front of this nice little board that gets updated every 3 months, say something nice about that person that you can genuinely appreciate, and you will then add value to each other and see each other's network. You guys with me on that? Can you do that? Yes? Yes? Okay, sweet. So, nuts and bolts. So you may say, theoretically, Spence, this sounds great, but I'm going to give you actually what to do next. Okay? Now, this is what I call the personal branding power hour. These are the 3 facets of it. First, I want you to write, and write is just kind of a catch-all. That's really for creating content. If you're more comfortable on video, if you're more comfortable doing audio, whatever, that's cool. Write first. Number 2, get social. So go on social media with a purpose. And number 3, go to school. And here's how they break down, okay? This is something that you'll get when you sign up for my newsletter right away. You'll get something that's just a 1-page PDF checklist. So, first 20 minutes, write. So what I want you to do is first thing if you can in the morning, if you're a morning person, that's cool if you're not, but find some time, find 20 minutes to produce something. So back when I was a salesperson, I guess I still am technically, but back when I was a salesperson, this was really easy because all I did was have conversations all day long with people who would go, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem. I'd go, oh, cool, I can fix that. So what kind of stuff should I be propagating on digital and social? Well, people's problems, right? Because if people are telling me one-on-one that they're having problems, then there are all of these people out there on the web that have very similar problems as well. And if you don't have those kind of interactions, what I propose to you is go to helpareporterout.com, subscribe to that service, which is free, and all of these people from all of these very famous publications like the Time and Chicago Tribune and Forbes and Inc., they'll go, hey, I'm a reporter, I'm writing this thing that is the news before it happens. I need to quote an expert because I, as the writer, am not. Can you please help me out? So worst case scenario, you are answering a reporter's question that you know is already important to that person in that news outlet. Best case scenario, that person quotes you and you form a relationship with them, which is also awesome. You guys with me? Can you do that? So in order, I would try to do this first. So create or produce something. And if you can't start with interactions you're having right now, go to a source like Help a Reporter and go, what is it that's going to come out in the news in a couple days, and write about those things or produce content about those things. Can you guys do that for me? Okay, cool. Number 2, then, is to use social media effectively. And this is the number 1 challenge that I hear from people out of 76 talks I get to do this year, is that people go, I just go down this social media rabbit hole, and 45 minutes later I'm watching YouTube, and I'm like, how did I even end up here? So what I would like you to do in order is this: acknowledge those that have said something nice about you. Now, first, this is not going to happen much until you start showing love to people, and then we'll start acknowledging you. Like Chris just saw this morning. Chris posted out on LinkedIn, who are some great speakers that you might want? And I hit him up at like 4:30 this morning, like here are 5 or 6 speakers, right? So we started a conversation that way. So acknowledge those. Then number 2, share what you've written. Share what you just produced. So put that on a social. Go, this is for me first, because this is what I know to be the truth, but I want to share it with you. I want to help you get smarter. And the last thing with the remainder of your 20 minutes is help other people look good using your social media channels. So help highlight what other people are doing. Say something nice about them. You guys with me so far? Okay. And the last one is what we call going to school. Now, this is something where a lot of us go, especially in digital and social, we can always read that next thing. We can always look for that new software package, like should I use Trello or Asana or Todoist or Wunderlist, or like what should I do? Like all these productivity hacks that end up ironically not being more productive for us. There's always more content to research, but what I'd like you to do is find out when you're trying to talk to somebody that is your prospect, that you want to do business with, ask them what they're reading and read those same things. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start developing a language together. So has anyone ever read Good to Great at all? Does that book ring a bell? Okay, so every executive, even if she hasn't read it, will lie to you and say that she's read it because she feels like she should. Same thing with dudes, okay? But it was written in 2001, and they have concepts like the hedgehog concept and the window in the mirror and getting the right people on the bus. And so when you start talking in the same language, people are going to go, oh, that's cool. Like we can get past all this trying to explain stuff to each other. We can instantly bond about something business related. And going a step further, you know what people love doing is they love giving advice, right? They love giving advice, but you know what they love even more? Is when you take and implement their advice and you go back to them and go, hey, you told me to read that book, I did, here are my takeaways, it was awesome. They'll be like, wow, no one listens to me, but you do. That was really cool, thank you. Okay? So please try that. So this is the one-pager that you can get at the end. which is just step by step by step. And this is DP's brilliance, taking something that's really just a hodgepodge of junk that I created and putting it on one page and making it instantly something that you can do. Okay? So I have one more ask of you, and this is the most important thing, and this is from page 207 of the book, and this is what we call the salesman's mistake. And there's an old adage in sales that things work so well that you stop doing them. Because you know what I didn't want to do after 164 straight voicemails? Is tell that same story again. But you know what? It worked. Because my prospects didn't get bored with it, my customers didn't get bored with it, I got bored with it. So what's going to happen is when you start implementing this personal branding power hour and you start to get results, you go, yeah, okay, now I want something new. I'm there. I'm always there with you. But when you find the stuff that works, you gotta do it. You gotta keep doing it, okay? So please keep this in mind. Look at what you've done, look at what's worked, and look at it objectively and go, may I keep doing this and feel satisfied by it, okay? So here's my ask of you. To get these 3 bonus PDFs, so we have the Personal Branding Power Hour, 2 other chapters from the book, just ask you to text my initials, SXS, just Sam, X-Ray Sam, to 66866, and then every Tuesday I'll send you a newsletter with all the latest stuff that we've been figuring out on social media as well.